H-A-S-N-O-T-D-O-N-E-S-O-A-L-R-E-A-D. You are watching a reading machine, an experimental system which uses a computer programmed to scan a printed page and translate the letters it finds into a series of comprehensible sounds. How this system works and what it may mean as a reading aid for the blind is our story today on Science Reporter. Hello, I'm John Fitch, MIT Science Reporter. Today we're at the Research Laboratory of Electronics at MIT to learn about a brand new computer technique for reading printed material out loud. It's this sort of aid that may eventually make such ordinary things as newspapers and personal letters, reading them, a possibility for the blind. Concern for the special problems of the blind is certainly not a recent thing. Way back in the 4th century A.D., St. Basil opened the Western world's first hospice for the blind at Caesarea, Cappadocia in Persia. Then over the succeeding centuries, such hospices became quite common in Europe. But they all thought only in terms of care, not education or mechanical sensory aids. It was only very slowly that any sort of reading systems were developed. The first was a scheme for engraving the letters on wooden blocks, thought up in 1517 by a Spaniard named Francesco Lucas. Then over the next few centuries, techniques grew to include raised lead type, pinhole-marked cardboard, and large wooden letters, all of them ponderous methods requiring that each copy be made by hand. The first real breakthrough came in the late 18th century when a Frenchman named Valentin Huy, who was director of an institute in Paris, discovered that one of his pupils could decipher several letters on a card because of the indentations made by the printing. Huy immediately used his pen handle to emboss some more signs which the boy could also read. The result was printing in relief. But once the principle of relief printing became commonplace, the well-known Braille alphabet was adopted for use throughout the English-speaking world. And now, Braille typewriters and stencils permit the blind to communicate in the written medium. Useful as Braille is, however, it still has some severe limitations. To learn about what some of these problems are and what modern technology can do about them, we talked with Dr. Samuel Mason, a professor of electrical engineering at MIT and leader of a cognitive information processing research group at the Research Laboratory of Electronics.
Well, as you know, John, there are quite a few people in this research group who are interested in problems of sensory aids for the deaf and the deaf, blind, and the blind. I think most people know about the cane that blind people use to help them avoid obstacles. And I no doubt many people have heard of Braille, the touch language that allows blind people to read printed material when it's been transcribed into Braille. And there are also these talking books pre-recorded by a human voice so that blind people can listen to novels and general literature. But these aids that exist and certain other technical systems that have been developed don't really solve all the problems of the blind person. What we're going to be looking at today is a experimental reading machine system that will solve some of the other problems. For instance, if a blind person gets his morning newspaper, he can't wait for it to be transcribed into Braille. You have to send it somewhere and get it back. And then there's specialized material, mathematics and so on, that maybe never will be put in Braille form. And then there's reading matter that needs to be read immediately, personal correspondence or sensitive material such as bills and dunning letters. And it's really towards this immediate reading problem that we're directing ourselves. And I'd like to show you a machine that an experimental system that we have, which will have a spelled speech output. It'll recognize print and speak out the letters. If it sees the word cat, it'll say C-A-T on the output. And let's go over and take a look at it. I think we'll first look at the front end. Here, here's a thing called a carriage, and we've cut a piece out of the page of a book. This is an honest sample of book print. We're not cheating. We didn't have this specially made up.
Not much of a plot.
No,
but...
and we want to look at realistic material. And we've arranged it this way for purposes of testing the system. Of course, in its final form, the machine would not require the user to cut out strips of paper from a book. It would work
have a whole page.
Yes, it would work on the book itself. So let me put this in here. There we are. I'll move it over to there. Now, underneath this box is a thing called a flying spot scanner. This is very much like a home TV set. There's a screen in here with a bright spot on it that can be moved around by the rest of the equipment. And there's a lens in here, John, and that bright spot is focused up right on the surface of that printed material, and there's a very tiny bright spot there. If it falls on the white part of the page, a lot of light's reflected, picked up by a photocell, and we know that we're on white. If it falls on black, there's not much light reflected, and we know we're on black. So the machine can tell the difference between white and black, which is all you need to get the information off the page. Now,
can we see it work?
Yes, I'm going to cover this up because there's quite a bit of light in here.
Oh, I
and
see.
This little
lights,
box,
for the TV show.
This little box is not completely light tight.
All right.
So let me turn on the scanner. Switches 9 and 11. And come on over here a second, John. This is really this is a small digital computer that we built here to control that scanner. It
tell where to move the spot around?
It tells the spot where to move depending on what it's seen. And actually, we're testing out various systems. In final form, we wouldn't need such complexity, but we do need this for flexibility to see what to do. I'm going to ask Dr. Francis Lee, who was one of the two project engineers on this system development, to run the scanner for us.
All right. Now what will we be seeing?
The first thing we'll see here is just a sort of a TV display of the particular word that's on the scanner.
Oh yes, I can see the word away.
Yeah, the spot is moving across the whole field there, just the way it does on your TV set. But what we want is to tell what shape the letter is.
So this isn't very useful, is it?
Yeah, this particular information doesn't do us much good. And Francis can now switch into another mode of operation, in which the little spot under the control of this special purpose computer actually makes decisions as it goes along. It senses whether it's on black or white, and traces around the edge of the letter.
Now we have just the letter W.
It's sort of like, the little spot is like a man walking around an island and maintaining his path by telling whether he's walking in water or on sand. He makes a decision and keeps on the line. So he can trace around, this spot can trace around the outline of the letter.
Yes, well, I don't see quite how a spot makes up its mind, whether it's on the black or the white.
We'll have to look at some details if we want to really see how it works. So let's go over to the blackboard, John.
All right.
And I've cheated just a little bit by putting these spots on the blackboard. What these are the specific locations where that scanner looks. It doesn't look everywhere, it just looks at certain spots. But I've made a very much expanded picture here. These spots are really only about a 200th of an inch apart, or maybe even closer. And well, I'll take an example. If the scanner happened to have a capital D on it, then the black region would be in there. And if I want to blow up the upper left-hand corner here, I could say that maybe the D is coming in like this.
So it really is expanded.
Yeah, well, it's really should be expanded even more. So in here is black. That's all black area over here. There's the inside corner here, but we don't have to worry about that. And now, let's say that the scanner gets going. I want to start it up here, I think. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Suppose it it gets going from a previous point, and here it senses white. That's outside the letter.
Okay.
The computer is programmed to tell the spot, to tell the scanner, to turn right, make a 90-degree right turn when it stops and senses white. So it jumps to the right then. It makes a right turn and goes over to here. Now it stops and says, what color is it? And it's black. So now it's instructed to make a left turn. Left turn for black and a right turn for white. So it makes a left turn, goes up here, and now it sees black again, so it makes another left turn. And here we go. Right turn in white, right turn. Now it's going to do something a little trickier. It's got to make 3 successive left turns because it saw 3 black points.
So now it's
back to the white point again, so it turns right and comes out. Now, as you can see from this expanded picture, it looks a little bit like garbage, but remember that here's the edge of a letter. We really have these spots very close together, so the thing is walking around here and really drawing us a pretty good picture of the edge of the letter.
But I didn't see a wiggly line on that screen. What was it that I was seeing?
The thing that was displayed on the screen was only the black points. This one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, this one.
And they really
so if
are
you connect all of
edge.
them, that's the thing you saw. The points were so close together it looked like a continuous line, but it was really these separate points. Now, this gives us the edge points, but that doesn't recognize the letter. And so we have to go further and say what the computer does when it's handling this information.
All right.
So here's how it goes. And I'm going to pick a different letter just for convenience, as it's a nice one to look at. That's a letter C. We actually do a little smoothing and a few other steps here that I'm going to leave out. But we wind up with this edge information, this edge trace, all these successive points. And now what we do, as the computer marches through this contour, it is instructed to pick out the extremes of the motion in north-south and in east-west. So here's obviously the place where you get farthest north on this letter, and we'll make a mark there. Now we come on over here and we get to a place where we're way over to the east, so we'll make a mark there. Now here it comes down to the south, you make a mark there. That isn't the most southerly point, but it is a place where it turns from south to north, so we mark that also. Then here's a north and a west and a south, and then a north, and then an east, and a south, and back here to a west again.
Now, when you say mark, you don't mean actually make little lines in the picture,
No,
but to sort of remember where these are?
No, what the computer does is just store the information on which of these events happened in what order. And really what we store in the computer is a 0 for an east or west and a 1 for a north or south. So this would be 0, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1. Now, this scanner actually sneaks in from the left and finds the letter, and then it starts around. So it would start out here, and it would go 0. This is all that would be retained in the computer, plus some other stuff, a little bit of other stuff that I won't go into. A 0, and then a 1, 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, 1. Now, that is called a code word.
Oh, I see. That particular that describes that particular shape, doesn't it?
And matter of fact, the fellow who was originally working on this got so he could look at these code words and pretty much tell what the shape looked like.
Yes, but it doesn't say that to the computer that that's the letter C. How does it know that 010?
Well, we have to train the computer, and actually every time you see what we've done here is we've come down from a whole lot of points to just the points on a line. And then we've selected just a few points off of that line. So we're getting rid of all this extra information. We're getting it down to simpler information, but still retaining enough so that we can tell which letter it is. And so what happens, as we'll see in a moment, you have to train a computer. You have to let it look at a letter, and then it tells you, the computer tells you that it picked up a certain code word, but it says to you, I don't know what it is. And you tell it. You type on the typewriter over there, C, and from then on it knows that this is C. Puts a C by it.
Oh, could we see that word?
Yeah, we keep going that way.
Fine.
Professor Donald Troxell, the other co-project engineer on this development, is here at the console, and he's going to do a little teaching and training of the machine for us.
All right.
I think what we'll do first is set up a word that the scanner's looking at, and without any stored memory at all, starting fresh, and the machine now knows nothing, we'll start tracing letters and generating these code words that I mentioned.
Right.
And then we'll have to tell the machine what each word means, which letter it designates. So let's try the first one. We're going through a preliminary setup mode. It traced the letter A and generated a code word here, 401452536. Now,
Those
John,
aren't just ones and zeros.
yeah, well, that's a different kind of coding. That's called an octal coding, and each of those numbers there represents a group of 3 ones and zeros.
Oh, I see. You sort of
For
added them up.
instance, if it were 111, it would write 7.
Okay.
It's binary coding. Now, Don can train the machine by typing a letter A, and the machine now knows that that's an A. Now it traced another letter, the next one, W, in that word away, and we'll start training it on the W. And now it catches another A and generates a different code word.
Well, why didn't it know that was A? We
Well,
taught it that already, didn't we?
Well, when it sees a different A, in the first place, the printed shape
I
of that
see.
might be a little bit different due to ink run, but not too much different.
So it said
So here we-
6536 instead of 2536.
The only difference here is in this first number in the second part of the code group.
Okay, so we have to tell it that's an A also.
Yep. Now comes a Y, the letter Y, and we'll
And that's the
train
end
it
of
on
word.
that, and that's the word away.
Right.
So shall we go back and see how it does?
Okay, what did it write? Oh,
Period.
period.
Oh,
Oh,
it
there was a
picked a-
period at the end of it. It already knows periods, huh?
It knows periods because if there's a little fly speck that isn't too small, then that's a period.
All right. Could we now try the word again and see if it knows it this time?
Okay, let's do that. Don has returned it, and it shouldn't. It missed that A again because it generated a different code word. And it got AW and Y, period. What happened here? It missed the A again? Let's try it once more. Can we try that again? Here we go on that word. A. Okay, new code word. We tell it it's an A. New code word for the W. And it got the W-A-Y, period. So it isn't doing too well yet. It's sort of stupid, hasn't learned enough.
Well, I can understand why it might miss 2 different A's because of imperfections in the printing, but why would it miss the same letter like W, which is only there
For
once?
instance, that first letter in the word away. When the scanner sees that letter the second time, remember that this is a real scanner working on real printed matter, and there's a little shimmer, a little jitter. The shape might not look exactly the same to the scanner the second time. Things don't happen exactly the same with a real-life scanner. So it's possible for the letter to generate several different code words, even when looking at the same character. And in fact, if we wanted to train this up in a hurry on one letter, we could just turn off the scanner advance, and
Well, let's do that.
we could turn off the scanner advance and pick one of these letters and let it look at it several times and see how long it takes to store enough code words to put that letter in the bag.
Okay.
Here we go again. AW. Okay. WWW. It's doing pretty well. Oh, now let's stop. Here it got the A, then it got the W, and it retraced the W, about a dozen times. And it recognized it each time, which meant that each time there was generated on that same W, in that same position, one of the code words that we already have for W. But then it finally generated a new code word that it hadn't seen before because of this jitter. And so we'll tell it that that's a W. And now we'll see how it does. Whoop. Oh, we picked up another one. Yeah.
Now it knows about 4 different code words for W.
Yeah, here comes a 5th one in. Now it's doing pretty well. W, 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 W.
Each time around it
And
says it's W.
Yep. Well, let's let it go for a second or two.
Oh, that's another one.
Put another one.
So what you're saying is you might really need to store away about, half a dozen different code words for the same letter.
Yeah, we actually can do a trick when we're running the machine, trying to run it usefully with some stored memory. That's enough.
Yeah, I believe that.
When we're trying to run it with some stored memory, we have, say, 5 or 6 of these code words stored. If we trace a letter and it generates a new code word, we can tell it, no soap, go back and trace it again, and chances are we'll get the one of the code words stored in our memory. In fact, we make it trace as many as 2 or 3 times if necessary, and that way the machine does pretty well with a minimum of storage.
Well, have you already trained this machine so that it can read
yeah, we've put in some time with the material from this book that we're training it on, and we have a tape which we're now actually running into the machine over in the other building. The computer that we're tied to that does this recognition, it's a PDP over in building 26, and we're running the tape in now and setting up the full memory that we have already used for training, that we've already accomplished by training. And
you've done some technique like this of teaching it how to read W
yes,
and get it a few codes for that and a few for A.
Yeah,
and so
somebody sat here and trained it on some material and trained it up on each letter like this. And I think we have about 400 or 500 stored code words.
Okay.
And this should be enough to take care of this alphabet pretty well. I guess
All
we're
right,
running,
now we got a whole line of stuff in the...
Yeah, we're going to look at a new line now. I think they're setting up the computer over there.
Is the tape reader on?
You already read the tape in.
Thank you.
Okay. That's our intercom to the other building. Don is starting it on the beginning of the line instruction. Shall I read off the line, or we wait
see
till...
how the computer makes out with the line.
It's sort of finding the beginning of the line now. Now what happened? And he started to lead.
And he started to lead. Oh, that's pretty good.
And let's... Okay, and he started to lead. That's a portion of the text. It looks to me as though we had a little dropped a pulse or hung up there somewhere at the beginning. We try once more?
Sure.
Has not done so already, period.
And it still doesn't like the capital A.
No. And he started to lead. All right, now how did it do? Let's see how it did. The sentence that it was, the portion of material it was looking at was the following. Has not done so already, period, and he started to lead. And the only character it missed was a capital A.
Capital A. Well, that's very interesting. But tell me, Dr. Mason, this isn't... it's wonderful for it to be able to recognize, but if it just types it out again, that isn't going to be very useful to the blind person, is it?
No, he can't do much better with the typewritten page than the original book page.
Right.
So we'll go over to the speech. But just before we do that, I want to mention that we've done about 50 characters here and it got one of them wrong. But we have done some testing on this material with larger blocks of material, and it's doing about 0.5% error. So out of every 200 characters, it might miss one. But this isn't too bad for a reading machine for the blind. In fact, some people think that a blind person could operate with a reading machine with an error rate as high as 5%. And so we're down to 1/10 of that right now. So now let's see what the speech sounds like.
All right.
We're setting...
A-S.
Has.
N-O-T.
Not.
D-O-N-E.
Done's. Next
S-O.
next word is already.
A-L-R-E-A-D-Y-P-E-R-I-O-D.
Oh, it spells out the period.
Yeah.
A-N-D.
And?
H-E.
E.
S-T. A-R-T-E-D.
Started.
T-O.
To.
L-E. A, D.
Lead.
Incidentally, this time it got that letter it missed before, the capital
Very
A.
interesting.
So,
But if you were trying to read a book, this would be an awfully slow and laborious means of doing it, wouldn't it?
yeah, well, the way the way we have this set up now, we're reading the spelled letters out slowly so that it's easy to understand what's going on. But these letters were prepared from human speech. That is, a human being, Ken Ingham, actually, who did this work, spoke into a microphone, and then his speech wave was sampled and stored on tape as numbers, and it's in the machine over there. And he has tailored these sounds down until each one only takes 2/5 of a second, or actually only 1/5 of a second, 200 milliseconds. So if we pack this close together right now, it would be, instead of saying already, A-L, it would be A-L-R-E-A-D-Y, fast, at about 60 words a minute.
Right.
Now, we're doing some research work on compressing that further by overlapping the edges of these sounds.
I see, right.
And we have some tape that's been pre-prepared on the computer to illustrate that compression.
Well, tell me, is there any possibility that in the future you might actually be able to, well, generate real words, not spell them out?
Yeah, that's another phase of this project. We we are working on connected speech, and with connected speech, instead of saying A-L-R-E-A-D-Y, I would say already. Now, this is more of a job to do. There are
You'd
speech...
have to store the syllables themselves somehow?
Well, the first part of that would require translating from the English spelling into what's called a phonetic spelling, because the phonetic symbols are what you need to drive an artificial speech generator. Now, we think we know how to do this, and we hope we can accomplish that within a year or two. And that would be, of course, at a much higher rate. You could maybe make that go 180 words a minute.
Now, what other sorts of things are you working on?
For our studies of the human information requirements and capabilities of blind people, we really want to get a big system together here that will allow us to see what kinds of things a blind person can learn to do and can find it comfortable to do. So we have a lot of flexibility here. And we're working on other outputs, such as a tactile display, a sort of a slow-speed tactile TV, which can lay out pictures and diagrams and other material that a blind person couldn't get from a recognition system.
So you'd actually feel
Yes.
the outlines of a picture. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Mason. It's been most interesting. Today, we've been visiting the Research Laboratory of Electronics at MIT. Our guest has been Dr. Samuel Mason. I'm John Fitch, MIT science reporter.